Hey everyone, we are really excited for today's session. Thank you everyone for joining. Today we are going to be talking about how to accelerate growth with SEO implementation. First, we have a fireside chat with a Conductor customer, Eric Farkas, the Senior Director of Digital Marketing at WeWork, and our VP and Head of Account Success, Michael Brew. They will be discussing how to accelerate growth with SEO implementation, followed by a workshop with Jake and myself, where we can really discuss more in depth what we've done with our clients to really help grow their SEO channels.
All right, let's jump into the fireside chat.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to C3 and Fireside Chat. I'm Michael Brew, VP Head of Account Success at Conductor. I'm here today with a good and longtime friend, Eric Farkas, who is the Senior Director of Digital Marketing at WeWork. Eric and I go way back, about 25 years, I think, at this point. I think we have a little picture here to show you a little bit of where we were back in the day. And crazy that we then met, and we've had, over the years, he actually went to Michigan and my son went to Michigan. So we've had this connection. And wouldn't you know it, the day that I'm onboarding at WeWork, I see this guy here, Eric Farkas from Plainview, and, kind of walk up and can't believe I get to see Eric after so many years. So, Eric, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here and great to speak virtually to everybody here.
Hey, Eric, give the audience a little bit of information on your background, on kind of how you got to WeWork, what you've been doing, within digital marketing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I graduated from the University of Michigan 15 years ago. And when you think back to like 2006, 2007, that was right as Apple was introducing the iPhone and mobile like technology was really taking off. And I had the good fortune of starting my career at a mobile gaming company, Gameloft, and working in their marketing department, where I really like was able to learn about like marketing, learn about like mobile, and have kind of ridden that wave like my entire career. Prior to coming to WeWork, I spent 8 years at Apple and Twitter, 4 years at each of those incredible companies. And at both Apple and Twitter, I was working in a product marketing capacity on their advertising platforms. At Twitter, I was focused on our video advertising business and saw that like really grow to be the majority of our advertising revenue. And I came over to WeWork to lead their digital marketing efforts and to like make sure that the WeWork brand and the WeWork products that we all know and love really came to life on the website. And that's really where my efforts have been focused over the past couple years.
Crazy, totally
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah. Yep, I remember it well. I joined WeWork in a short window to actually help them build an in-house team on organic marketing and media. So again, we got to really interact right away at WeWork, but really want to talk about you and what's gone on these last 2 years because it's really been an amazing transition. So tell us about, when you started at WeWork, how the team was structured and what your role was.
Yeah, so when I started at WeWork 2 years ago, I was really the first hire within marketing that was going to be completely dedicated to the website. And my role was really to act as like a bridge builder to try and break down some of the internal silos that existed between technology and marketing. And like I said, my focus was on the website and that was including, but certainly not limited to our organic marketing efforts.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and I remember, kind of seeing you as we sat out there together in those open spaces and, our teams interacted as we both got started. So how has that structure of the team changed today?
Yeah, so like when I first started, SEO was being worked on. There were a number of people dedicated to it, but as I like to kind of refer to it, we weren't playing offense with our efforts. The majority of our work was more tactical, more maintenance items or defense items, and not that strategic offensive items. And from my vantage point coming in, part of the reason why we weren't playing offense is that we didn't have an SEO lead within marketing dedicated to working with Conductor and getting those strategic projects implemented. And so it was my job to have an SEO lead on my team do just that, really be the internal strategic champion for SEO. And so now today, the SEO lead sits in marketing, is connected to the business, understands our marketing objectives, our corporate strategy, and works really closely with Conductor to develop an SEO strategy with necessary tactics that ladder up to that corporate strategy. And so while the SEO lead sits centrally, this person needs to be connected to the entire business, both our central marketing functions, but also the regional marketing teams that are like understanding of the local nuances and are connected to the folks within Conductor who sit in market. And so this SEO lead really brings all those teams together. And then in terms of how else the business has evolved, like in addition to having this SEO lead sit centrally, we also hired an amazing head of content marketing who runs our blog, Ideas by WeWork. And not only does her and her team understand the value that content and SEO can have, but they also work in a similar capacity where they're deeply connected to what the business objectives are and develop a content strategy that helps us achieve those objectives. And of course, they're partnering closely with you guys over at Conductor to uncover the SEO insights needed to ensure that the articles we publish align to our business and speak to our value and help us rank for the relevant keywords.
So, I mean, really, it's an amazing, having been on the inside of WeWork and really, the fastest growing company in the world when I was there and you started, it's an amazing transformation in what you've been able to accomplish, through the changes that have been going on at WeWork. And really, you've had some great success. How were you able to accomplish that? And, how did you get kind of the dedicated resources, even in tech, to actually implement SEO changes, which we all know, as SEOs is one of the biggest issues that we face within a company?
Yeah, it was definitely reassuring once like we kind of spoke to you guys about some of the challenges we face and where we wanted to go, to understand that this is something that a lot of different companies are facing. How we accomplished this transformation was really like persistence is a virtue. It wasn't easy. There were a lot of meetings. And it was especially a bit of an uphill battle because there was definitely a sentiment within the organization that SEO didn't provide enough value to warrant the investment that we felt it deserved. So we needed to really overcome that hurdle. And what the team and I did was we really worked cross-functionally to just hit the reset button. And we needed to be honest about our past challenges and the skepticism that existed, and try and learn from the past along a number of different vectors. One, how do we work better together? Two, how do we get the necessary development resources to make an impact? And then three, if we are going to get those resources, how do we make sure that we're working on the most impactful projects? And so I'll unpack each one of those. So on the first point, like working together, like the transformation really occurred because we needed that SEO lead within marketing really connected to the business. We felt that this person needed to really be the DRI or directly responsible individual, if you will, and champion SEO across the organization at a global level as well as at a local level. And we needed to have clear roles and responsibilities between the many teams involved in making SEO successful. For number two, like how do we get dev resources invested in SEO? This was an effort of just getting leadership bought in to the power of SEO, and that's not always easy.
Yeah.
But we had success by just being honest about what the SEO landscape looks like, and that it's a longer time horizon to really show impact, and it's a slow burn with a lot of different variables at play, and we needed to just lay that out on the table. And after doing that, we needed to say, hey, this is the KPI that we want to move. Like, what is the KPI that SEO can truly impact? For WeWork, the KPI was our non-brand keyword rankings for for terms like office space. Like we wanted WeWork to be ranking for that. And we needed to show that by impacting that KPI, it would move the downstream metrics that really matter to the business as a whole, leads and sales. And then we also were able to get leadership bought in by just showing what different tiers of SEO support could look like, including showing what happens when you don't have any SEO like investments, and how that then leads to competitors ranking higher for keywords and organic traffic decreasing. And so that's how we were able to really get our leadership team bought in to the power of SEO. We also then needed to work closely with our partners within technology and figure out how do we get them bought in. And one of the lessons we learned is you need to try and find different shortcuts to implementation. For our team, it was translating those high level SEO priorities into more actionable but digestible things for the engineers to sink their teeth into and begin making progress on. And then you need to do some of the easy things, like, or I like to call it like the easier things, right? Which is you need to communicate regularly. You need to show your wins, show your learnings, hold like quarterly business reviews, since you're really trying to shift perception internally on the power of SEO, and do so in a way that's educating stakeholders. And then going back to like the third like point around working on the most impactful projects, like if leadership and tech are bought in and we dedicate developers to focusing on SEO, like you need to make sure that you're putting them to good use. And you need to like balance your offensive strategic projects with defensive projects that are always necessary, but you need to really, I think, start out with like a big rock that can really move the needle, not only for that SEO KPI, but can be connected to your business objectives. And then finally, lean on Conductor. Like we found a lot of success by like challenging you guys to come up with the right strategy for us. But we needed to set you up for success by being clear on what our content strategy looks like, what our overall marketing strategy looks like, and what we want the desired outcomes to be. And so by really like making progress in terms of how we work together, how we get dev resources, and what we had those resources work on, we were able to accomplish like a transformation internally that I'm really proud of, and that's having a really meaningful impact on the business.
Well, completely amazing. Hearing, the transformation, knowing from the inside of Conductor that you use Conductor as your infrastructure for organic marketing, through SEO, content, and web. It's just fantastic. It's what great companies do. And, WeWork is a great brand coming out of a, tough time. And yet, the improvements you've shown both kind of strategically in embracing organic marketing and getting ready for what's next has just been really incredibly impressive. Um, last part is how have you really been measuring? You gave us the KPIs, but how have you been measuring success, and communicating that to leadership?
Yeah, we measure success by focusing on that primary SEO KPI that I mentioned earlier, like page one rankings for a static list of non-brand keywords, terms like office space plus London. And we measure success against that KPI, and we tie it to further downstream metrics that we know are important to the business. Thankfully, like the efforts that we did throughout 2020 have been proving to be highly like effective. In 2020, we exceeded our page one ranking goals, both at a global level as well as in each of our 4 priority regions. And the share of traffic coming to the site from these non-brand keywords is much higher year over year, which is great. And where we're seeing the biggest gains are where we're investing the most in SEO. So you can really see a much more causal relationship to the efforts that we're doing. The other major success that we're having is on our content marketing efforts. SEO is influencing the topics and the articles that we publish on our blog. And the impact we've seen is year over year increases in organic traffic. It's the type of chart you want to wake up and look at every single morning. It continues to go up and to the right. And this really like shows like how the SEO strategy that we've been working on is a slow burn, but it pays off. And now our blog Ideas by WeWork accounts for a larger share of total website traffic and has been critical in helping us rank on page one for some of those keywords. So those are both areas that we're looking at that we're really proud of and show us that the efforts we're doing are successful.
Yeah.
And then sorry, I would just say the other point is just like organizationally, like we see success in our efforts and our partnership because the SEO like stakeholders internally just have a bigger seat at the table, and more of our stakeholders within other marketing and other technology functions understand the implications that their work can have on SEO. And they're coming to us to help them and to give us heads up when work is going live. And so that just kind of shows not only what we can do for the business from a metric standpoint, but how we've been able to get the organization behind it. And that feels great given the skepticism we initially had on the value of SEO.
Yeah, completely fantastic. And having been there again and really understand just where you're coming from. And I think for the audience, they don't realize how competitive this space is on top of it. They hear WeWork and they think like WeWork owns the market, and it's just not the case. Incredibly competitive, especially within key local cities.
Yeah, and that's exactly why we picked a KPI that we felt that we should be held accountable for. If somebody is going into Google and typing in WeWork, like that's because of our brand awareness and the great perception that we have as a brand that when people think about office space, they think about WeWork. But we want our efforts to be connected to when somebody isn't thinking of WeWork, but instead is thinking of, I want an office space for rent in New York. That's where WeWork needs to be ranking high to capture that demand.
Yeah. I've sat through a lot of sessions like this as the listener, and I think you've given this audience a roadmap, to success in organic marketing. So I really thank you for how thoughtful, this strategy was and your whole approach. So let's leave the audience with a couple of takeaways, some real meat that they can go away with. Hopefully they'll listen again and they've taken some great notes because, again, you've done just a great job in creating great success. But give us a couple of key takeaways that we can all use to really evangelize, SEO, make it more important, and get a seat at the table within a company.
Absolutely. Yeah, I hope that folks are finding like the transformation within WeWork valuable. I would say the 3 key takeaways that I would want somebody to walk away with are one, like to be set up for success and to have SEO be a priority, you need to have an internal champion. And that internal champion needs to be like connected to the business and setting the business requirements that drives the execution of it. The second thing is to get leadership bought into the value that SEO provides. Make sure that you're able to connect the SEO KPI to a larger business metric that the company is looking at, because everything needs to ladder up to the bottom line. And then three, for getting tech to dedicate resources to SEO, make sure that like you don't have one foot in and one foot out. Like it can't be, SEO can't be something that you kind of work on. If you want to make this succeed, you need to really commit to it and sink your teeth into a big rock project that is able to move the needle and give you a chance at success.
Totally fantastic. I think you've proven that creating really the organic maturity within your organization by bringing SEO content and web together, it's just proof that, that's where success lays to really improve the results that you're looking to accomplish, from organic marketing. So amazing job. Great seeing you as always.
Yeah.
And, I think we will
it's
remain
great to do
connected.
this.
Yeah, for the next, 20 or 30 years. So we'll see what life brings to us.
I look forward to it. It's awesome getting to chat with you in a professional context now, having been like personally like family friends for so long. It's a real trip, and it's a huge testament. Everything that's happening is a testament to the folks within WeWork that are dedicated to SEO, as well as everybody on the WeWork team over at Conductor. It's been a great partnership, and we've gotten a lot of value out of the platform. And like you said, looking forward to what the next many years have in store.
All right. Hope everyone enjoyed that chat as much as we did. Tons of golden nuggets in there. Really a lot to take away. So we're going to go into a little workshop right here, kind of using their talk track and digging a little deeper, kind of breaking that down and kind of making everything a little more actionable. So excited to get into this. We're going to go over working as a team, all about like collaboration, making sure you're getting a seat at the table. Really, everything starts with getting buy-in. So we'd love to dive a little deeper into that. Making sure we're defining the right KPIs and goals, super important. Prioritizing your roadmap. I know I saw some chats about that. And then measuring success along the way. So I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there are any questions throughout this entire presentation, please feel free to put them in the chat, and Jake and myself will address them at the end. But really diving into some of the info, really based off of what Eric said, one of the biggest things to start off with is how to work together with your team. As an SEO myself, one of the first things I do with most of my customers is really try to show the synergy that can happen between the different channels. A lot of SEOs or a lot of SEO teams kind of live in silos at their companies, and this is very common. So one of the first things I like to do is take the data and insights from the SEO channel and visualize it in a way to help the other teams, whether it's the paid team, the technical teams, the content teams, or the general marketing teams. There's a lot you really can do. For example, some of the things I've done with my paid teams is I kind of showed them how their paid keywords are already ranking organically. This can kind of give them some more insight into maybe where they could bid a little less, or maybe where they could bid a little bit more. Same thing with content or technical teams. It's sometimes really helpful to show how their older content is doing over time and which ones really need to be re-optimized. But Jake, what are some methods you do to really help educate your clients or your customers around the SEO basics?
Yeah, so Eric, in the chat there, Eric mentioned like his SEO lead being connected to the entire business, and really that person is vital for bringing teams together. And I think that really couldn't have been said any better. And kind of with a lot of the customers I work with, something we like to do. So I'll be meeting regularly with more of like the tactical SEOs who are in there in the platform, kind of working on things on a day-to-day basis. But kind of taking a step back, what we like to do is provide like overarching education sessions. So maybe it could be something as like once a quarter, bringing in folks from your paid team, from the social team, from engineering, and showing them not only educating them with like an SEO 101, 201, 301, but kind of showing them like all this data, all this organic data we have at our fingertips, and kind of diving deeper into how they can leverage this organic data, kind of help in their everyday workflows. And that's been really important. And I've seen that really have a big impact on number of businesses.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better. That's really one of the first things I like to do in the beginning of all my engagements as well. I like to start off with SEO education. It's definitely time consuming, but how else are we going to really break down these silos without the education part in the beginning? Most people aren't familiar with what a canonical tag is. They might not even be familiar with what a header tag is. And so it's really important to really understand or get on their level so they understand what we want to do. And it's not just around the SEO basics. It's also around like learning as much as you can internally as well. One of the things that Eric mentioned during the Fireside Chat is like, it's really important to understand the internal tools or the tech stack that we use, because we're not only trying to improve our SEO as a company, but also the processes and the marketing maturity that we had internally, because this will allow us to not be as, or SEOs to be as such like janitors and maintenance, but really be more proactive with these changes that we're making. And I guess, Jake, besides just from education, like looking at the picture, like how do we get a seat at the table? Like how do SEOs get a seat at a table internally?
Yeah, I think that leads perfectly into our next discussion here, which is really getting that buy-in. So to be that ominous figure we saw there on the last slide, it really starts with kind of getting that buy-in. And that all starts with finding the right support to really build internal stakeholders and champions. So really figuring out who your internal champion will be, and who believes in the organic channel. And really what that boils down to, or the best way to do that, is to prove that SEO works. What you're spending all this time doing, what you're getting paid for, actually has an impact. And often kind of you got to take a step back, and there's going to be like a never-ending list of things you could potentially work on, but maybe finding some quick wins, whether it's like picking some pages with big opportunities that can translate into quick, like impactful wins to really show executives and other team members that what you're doing or that SEO really works and can have that impact. Yeah, I mean, what are some examples of that you've seen successful?
I mean, yeah, very, very similar, because like even after all these educational sections, a lot of people like still don't care about SEO. They think of it as just another lunch and learn. They kind of forget all the stuff what goes over their head. They kind of forget it all. So I agree. I think we really need to find that internal champion. It could be an executive, or it could just be like a strategist or a business unit that's more open to making changes, because that's really the best way that I've gotten more buy-in working with my customers, is picking someone that's more open to making the changes, whether this is like, you see there's a lot of opportunity in their content, or there's some quick technical cleanup that we can make to really help improve their site. Just by testing that out and getting that buy-in from that one team can really show other people how easy it is to kind of make the changes themselves, or to escalate this and scale it out. Because as SEOs, we really like to get in the weeds a lot with our recommendations. So just as Jake said, like really making these recommendations more actionable so each team clearly understands what to do is very beneficial. And I feel like a part of just like education and getting buy-in, how else, Jake, do we really like tie like SEO to the business itself? Like how do we make sure that everyone really cares about SEO as a channel?
Yeah, a tactic we utilize is having quarterly business reviews, where, like I mentioned before, we'll be working with like the more tactical SEOs or other folks on a regular basis. But we like to have these quarterly business reviews where we bring in the executives, leadership, who aren't necessarily always in the day-to-day conversations. So we can really give them an overview of what we've been working on and kind of show off the success we've had over the last few months. We're going to get into a little more of that later when we talk through like KPIs, goal setting, sharing out successes, but really having those executive high level kind of meetings that are really easily digestible has been crucial. And then kind of our last point here, creating actionable takeaways for each team. So there's nothing worse than sitting in a meeting for an hour, however long, and coming out of that and being, okay, so now what? You really want to make sure that everyone's leaving that meeting with, okay, what are you going to be doing? How can they have an impact on it? And how this all ties together and really can impact like the bottom line.
Absolutely. And one of the ways that makes it really easy is when we use Conductor with our customers, we're always segmenting out our content and categorizing our keywords based off the optimizations and the technical updates we're making. So it's really, really easy to show the work that we're doing versus the overall site, because it helps executives or just other members better understand the impact that we're having on their content and on their website.
Yeah.
Because I guess one of the things that Eric really honed in on that I took to heart was making sure that our KPIs are tied to our larger business goals and objectives. So Jake, I guess what are some things that you do with your customers in the beginning to really help set these KPIs up and make sure that we're looking at the right KPIs?
Yeah, so sometimes, I mean, you should have a set of KPIs. You should have your personal KPIs for your goals, but you really want to make sure those kind of perfectly align, are always tied back to larger business objectives and goals that, like I said before, can have a direct impact on the company's bottom line. So let's say if you're a retail or e-com site, make sure we're increasing our page one organic visibility, which in turn leads to increasing organic revenue, things that leadership executives are going to care about. If you are B2B, then increasing organic conversion metrics such as lead generation from form fills, downloads, demos, etc. If that's important to your leadership, make that your KPI and kind of show them how the organic channel can kind of cipher up to that. So I think that's something that we've really had a lot of success with there. I don't know if you want to share any specific examples or talk a little more about KPIs that you've seen work for some of the brands you've worked with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything you said, I definitely recommend that we focus on as well. But there could be other KPIs that we like to focus on too, whether it's technical changes that we're making, like benchmarking our technical foundation prior to the site versus after making the changes can definitely help. Or also benchmarking, I guess, your SEO program and process prior to coming on board, because that's another area that we can really have impact in. We're not only helping our content become more visible, but we're also helping our operations become more efficient or our company become more mature within the SEO program as well. So I definitely think there's a lot you can do to make sure that you're contributing and making your processes more efficient for the future.
Absolutely. And I think something else that can't be understated is really bringing in that competitive aspect. SEOs tend to be competitive, and so are usually executives. That's how they got to that position. I know, Zach, you're competitive, and you really want to make sure to show executives what your competition are doing, and making sure there's a competitive aspect part of your KPIs, and really utilizing kind of platforms reporting where you have insight into that, and you can really benchmark and look at across your sector, break it down. Obviously, not everything's created equal, and kind of creating segments and okay, who's visible here, who's visible there, who are the new players, making sure you're aware of all that, and that kind of ties in to these overarching goals or KPIs.
Yeah, exactly. I'm definitely very competitive with my SEO. I'm not pulling my hair out over keyword wins and losses, but I think it's important to be competitive because SEO is a competitive sport. It's not like we're just doing something in a silo and no one else is doing it. We need to really show our executives what our competition is doing and what can happen if we don't keep up. I also like to look at the competitive landscape to try to show the competitors my executives my true organic competitors. Sometimes people are so familiar with their direct competitors, they kind of lose sight of other people in the space. There could be new emerging organic competitors with a really big content strategy that we're not even aware of. Or we could figure out affiliates to partner with around keywords that we may never rank well for, but we're clearly relevant around. And I also think it's important because when we are optimizing content and jumping up into positions, we're taking those spots away from people. So show this to executives. Kristen King, who was in a panel yesterday, said it best, have your executive actually just Google an important keyword to them so they can see where your company is right now, and then have them continue to do it as you optimize the content or make the technical updates to show that progress of how we're winning out versus others. Something also that I think is important as SEOs is a lot of executives are more familiar with paid and TV ads. So Jake, how do you really tell your customers or help set their expectations to make sure that it's not, or to make sure it's realistic?
Yeah, so it really all starts with being realistic. Like you just mentioned, it's the organic channel isn't paid or display where you're going to put money in and you get an immediate result. Here, we're putting in the effort now, and really what we're doing is going to yield results and grow over time. But really, you need to be transparent with leadership about how long things might take with SEO. So that kind of goes back to making sure, we're going to talk about this, I think, coming up, but prioritizing properly and making sure you're kind of finding those quick wins that you can like show off, make sure you're getting that buy-in with, and then setting up that like longer term roadmap. And obviously just expectation setting. If an SEO program, implementing an SEO program is brand new to your business, if you don't have that organic maturity, then it's not realistic to expect page 1 rankings for your business critical terms overnight. So really just kind of level setting and making sure that nobody has unrealistic expectations is going to be crucial to your success.
I totally agree. And I'm really happy you brought up prioritization, because like every time, or most of the times when I'm starting off in a new engagement, it's sometimes overwhelming on like what to take action on first, or what we feel will have an impact right away, because you really do want to try to get that buy-in and try to find those quick wins to show like, hey, SEO works and we need to invest more in it as a channel. So things that I like to really do is, whether it's from a technical audit or a content prioritization list, I like to better understand like the most impactful projects that we can work on. And this can be whether it's by department or whether it's cross-functional. There's a lot of things we can do to kind of figure out what issues might resolve other issues as well. One of the things that Eric said best during the Fireside Chat is like, when we have the resources, we need to make sure that we're using them. So by building out a project plan or a roadmap, we can better figure out the resources that we need so that we're not losing them, and so that we can actually dedicate more time and more energy to these things. But Jake, as you mentioned, like SEO is a longer term play. How do we make sure that we're always communicating what's going on throughout this long-term process?
Yeah, so like instead of teams being scrambled and siloed, like when we set those KPIs, if we are mapping them to those bigger business objectives, we're kind of making sure that we're all working towards the same goals. And maybe we start out by plotting everything we discovered. Like we're going to do the start of engagement, we're going to do a full technical audit, which might lead to a laundry list of technical issues or projects that need to be addressed. We do a full content audit, we'll have all those content opportunities. So take all that, really plot it based on level of impact, level of effort, to build that prioritization list, and then turn that into your 3-month roadmap, your 6-month roadmap. Communicate that effectively, and that will kind of be your building block or your success plan in the long run.
Absolutely. Apologies. It's like torrentially downpouring right now, so I was slightly distracted by the noise, but absolutely agree with everything Jake said, because like one of the best things about like prioritizing and creating this roadmap is then it's really, really easy to measure and share that success. One of the things that we should absolutely do in the beginning of our engagement is make sure that we have an enterprise tool, whether it's Conductor or something similar, to make sure that we measure these campaigns. I mean, this is the fun part, we hope. This is where you can really share everything that you've been doing. And we all know executives sometimes have fire trails or last-minute requests. So I always make sure that I set up my campaigns. I track my campaigns accordingly for my clients so that we can easily communicate what's happening. We can monitor the wins that are going on instantly, and we can also learn from the campaign to figure out what's going on. But either way, we're not scrambling to figure out what's happening. We're constantly kept up to date with this. Jake, do you have any examples of how you've shared your success or measured success, whether it's for your clients or just for other examples?
Yeah, a couple points there where I know like measuring and sharing success is kind of like the last step that we have here, but really you need to set yourself up to be able to do that in the beginning. If it is going to be like the fun part, making sure that you kind of have benchmarks set, you have the proper reporting set up, you know what all your keywords are, and you have them categorized, and you're able to measure them over time. There's nothing worse than saying, okay, we did all this work, but we didn't measure it along the way, and now we have to scramble. And how do we build a report out of this? How do we showcase this? It's really making sure from the get-go you're set up to kind of show those results. And then like examples like you asked, or ways to utilize. I've seen everything from like weekly newsletters around SEO that get blasted out to understand what's happening. I know we have like some automatic reporting where we're able to set up weekly reports that update with the latest data every week, and those get automatically sent out to executives. Maybe we'll have a higher level one, more of an executive report and more of a tactical report, ones with like paid specific data and how do the terms that we're bidding on and also ranking for organically, how are those rankings changing? How can we kind of give this data to other teams and show our SEO successes and show how they could take this and digest it and kind of use it to their benefit. So there's really a number of ways we can like measure and share out success. But really, like we said before, it all needs to be digestible. Really kind of know your audience and make sure you're tailoring kind of how you're reporting to that audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I love keeping people updated along the journey, because like there are some times where we like start a project and then during a quarterly business review, for example, we show them the updates and they're like, that's great, let's replicate this. But they kind of, throughout those 3 months, there's a lot of things that took place that got us there. So either sending weekly newsletters to show the progress of the rank increases, or having those automated workspaces where we just set it and forget it, really helps people understand that it's a long journey. It's not just like quickly happening, but there's a lot of work that's going into it. And just as Jake mentioned before, like my favorite part of SEO is like when we do something right in one area, we can replicate those wins in the other areas. So if people are still not bought in after all of this, showing them the results and the success that you've had on these URLs or and this content can really help get them bought in and asking them for more help. So it's not like you're always going to them to try to improve their content. They're almost starting to think, how can SEO improve my content right from the beginning and right from the get-go? So we really
I love this last bullet here: rinse, repeat, and evangelize along the way.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. And I know we have some questions, so I definitely want to make sure that we get to everyone's questions or get to as many questions as possible. So feel free to continue to talk in the chat. We'll kind of just go through the questions one by one as time permits, but we really appreciate everyone's time today. We really appreciate Eric and Michael's chat earlier as well. Cool. Let's jump into some questions.
You want me to take the first one? So I see in the Q&A here, we have anything new you are trying to implement to increase traffic. So I think that really kind of all ties back to kind of keeping your finger on the pulse. So the SEO is an ever-changing algorithm industry. So really staying up to date, saying, okay, 2 months ago, the big initiative was moving from mobile first to mobile only. So okay, you might want to take all your resources and dedicate them to making sure you have a mobile-friendly experience that passes all those checks. Because if one day you wake up and those kind of everything's changed and we're only looking at the mobile site and you're not prepared, then you're going to see a big traffic decrease. Or if it's like Core Web Vitals right now, if that's like the kind of hot initiative, making sure you're there. So really kind of staying in tune and kind of using that to also guide your roadmap.
Yeah, absolutely. The next question I see is, how do you set realistic SEO goals and determine timelines for reaching them? I think Jake hit it earlier on. Like if you are starting a brand new SEO program, I'd be very conservative with your goals. Like you're not going to be able to rank on page 1 instantly for a whole bunch of primary keywords. So it really depends on a case-by-case basis, but you should really just be transparent and realistic. Keeping your executives up to date on the work that's going into, whether it's optimizations or technical, can really help appease them that you're working on things and you're working towards the end goal. But we all know within SEO that it's really hard to commit to a timeline, because even if you do something right, the next day Google might change their algorithm and it was almost all for nothing. So it's definitely just, it's important to just be transparent with your executives and keeping them up to date as you work on these projects.
Yeah, definitely agree. Try to build conservative business cases. Don't promise page 1 rankings overnight. Maybe say, okay, we have this whole keyword group which is currently ranking in positions 11 through 30. If we could take a third of these keywords and increase them by an average rank of 5 positions, and our average order rate is, or average selling price is this, our order rate conversion value is X, Y, and Z, we can actually tie that to numbers and make like a conservative business case there. And as far as like the last question here, like so many leaders asking for their keywords to be prioritized, what do you say? These are the most important and the rest needs to be secondary. I think sometimes you actually do have to say that. So you don't forget that like you are the expert here, and kind of own that. So you tell them, okay, you might think that this list of 5 is your most important terms, but back that up with data. And kind of, so yeah, I would say just really like double down and stick to your guns and make sure everything you're doing is kind of backed up with data.
Absolutely. Be prescriptive. You're the SEO expert. You have the insights and the data to back this up. Some leaders might think these are the most important keywords, and maybe they are, but just back that up with data. But maybe they aren't. And then you get a little bit more buy-in because you're showing the executives what we should actually be searching for. Sometimes, and if those are the most important keywords, then try to prioritize it, whether it's by more directional metrics like MSV, whether it's by rank, so you have a quick win, or just based off of relevancy, because in the end of the day, you are the expert. So just make sure that you stick to the knowledge you have within the SEO industry.
Definitely agree. Well, just want to thank you all for your time. Thank you to Michael Brew, Eric Farkas, for the wonderful conversation. Hope you guys got some great takeaways, and we appreciate your time and are happy and are looking forward to seeing continued SEO success.
Absolutely. And if there's any questions at all around what we covered today, feel free to reach out to Eric or myself and Jake, and we're happy to discuss this in more depth. Thanks everyone for their time.